Hey guys, in this video, we are going to take this UI and code it up using Flutter and Dart. This UI was generously shared with me by Eniola Ajibode. I hope I'm not mispronouncing his name. And you can find him on LinkedIn. I'll share the link to his LinkedIn below. He's a UI UX designer based in Lagos, Nigeria. So the first thing you do when you have a UI design. The first thing you do when you have a UI design is to separate it, is to sort of break up the UI. So in this case, the first screen, we are not going to implement this section of it. We haven't yet started on navigation using Flutter and Dart, but we are going to implement the rest. So this would be the first piece, the top section of the application. You could say it's a row with 3 columns, or you could say it's a row with just 3 text children. We'll see how I implemented it, and you guys can share if you have better implementations in the comments. So this is the first part. The next thing I did was break up this UI into this part, which I call the hero section. So this includes a row with 2 columns, or a column with 2 columns in it, but it makes more sense to say it's a row with 2 columns. And on one side of the column, it has a text and an icon. And then the next part of this UI would be this section, which I call the expense details section. Text that's organized or arranged in a similar fashion. It has a top little subtitle, a main title, some words at the end here, and some icons. The next part of this UI was this button text, view report section of the application. So this is an icon with some text and background. And the last part, which is probably the most complicated one to apply. So this is a grid view, essentially a grid view that shows whose parts or whose cells are organized sort of like a card. So it has this top row and this bottom row whose texts are arranged in a vertical direction, and it's essentially the same thing. So that's the first thing I did, was analyze the layout that I'd been given, the image that I'd been given to work with, and just have a rough idea of how I'd approach it. So I decided to start from the top here, implementing it, going down. The UI got crazy super fast, as you can imagine, with the nested widgets in Flutter. I spent quite a bit of effort trying to untangle the monstrosity that I had created in the widget tree. But here we are now with the code, and this is what I was able to do. So I'm going to take you through how I got to this part step by step, but it's not going to be a code along type of tutorial, because I think that would make the video extremely long and would probably beat the purpose of this tutorial. So the first thing you notice is on this side of the application, I have arranged it into screen 1 and screen 2. This would be screen 1 and this would be screen 2. I've put them in different folders. In the main.dat, I'm just switching between them manually for now, and I've just put a container here as a placeholder. So when you go to screen 1, you can see the files I've put here. There's a finals.dat, which just holds, I didn't implement as reusable for this purpose. And then we have the top section, which represents this part, the accounting top section. As you can see on this accounting top section, we have a widget, we have a container widget that holds everything. It has padding on the bottom of it to give it some space from the rest. And then the container has one child, which is also another container. And the reason I chose to wrap the row with a container is so that I could access the decoration, the box decoration. This is what provides the border radius and the background, and this background color over here, this sort of transparent-ish background color. So then it's just a row which I've set to main axis alignment, space between. It's truly a simple text widget, so I didn't have any issue laying them out in that way. Going back to the main.dat, in order to implement the dark theme, I used, in the material app, I used theme data brightness.dark and primary color, which I don't think I've actually used this primary color in the application. I did use the accent colors. So this is a way for you to set a global theme for your application, so you don't have to keep defining the styles manually in many different places. This provides uniformity in the application. I added a custom font here, Poppins. So you do that by creating a folder in the root of the application called fonts, downloading the fonts from Google Fonts. I will leave the link in the description, and then going to pubspec.yaml, which is sort of like package.json for Flutter and Dart, and then you will find fonts commented out. Just uncomment the part. I'm using one font, so I haven't commented the other font family. Then just replace the default Railways font that they have here with you have imported or you have dragged into the fonts folder after downloading from Google Fonts. And then you just say the name of your font family, the fonts, and the ones you want to use. I just want to use regular, bold, and semi-bold. I've imported into the fonts folder. Over here, there's an error you may encounter in that in the Flutter documentation, it says that you can provide a style here, and then you can say regular. You can say regular, but the thing is, this won't work if you specify the style to be bold. It won't work because the only styles that the Flutter API exposes is italic and regular. So you can only use the style key if you're setting it to italic or regular. Otherwise, you just leave it the way I've left it here. So this would apply the nice font to your app as shown here with the Poppins font. So I'm using Poppins. I like Poppins. So the first thing I'm going to do, just so that we can see how to reconstruct this, is I'm going to go to, first of all, I'm going to comment this out, and then I'm going to allow screen 1 to show, and then I'm going to go into the index.dat, which is where I have pulled together all the pieces of the UI that I had explained earlier. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to just, so if we save that and run R in the terminal, yeah, you should see only the top account section show up. So the application is getting the dark theme from the brightness.dark that I had defined in the theme. So over in this account info.top section, which I'm pulling into this index.dat for screen 1, if we go to that one, if we go to account info top section, we can see what we've done here. We have a container that has padding around it, and then there's also a container here that wraps the row. So the main thing here is the row, which coincides with this. This is a row with 3 text children aligned horizontally, because the row will by default organize these children horizontally. So I used mean axis alignment space between to spread them out like so, 1, 2, 3. And in each text, I've given each a text and a style. So for the first 2, I've given them colors of gray to give that sort of grayed out, softer compared to the pizza one, which is bold and bigger and larger. So I added this container here to provide this box decoration, as I mentioned earlier. And this was a pretty simple implementation of this part of the application. It was pretty simple. Main thing is a row with these children. The row needed to be wrapped in a container in order to allow for this border radius and this decoration. And then we wrapped everything in a container so as to access the padding, so that we could sort of push whatever comes below it down by 20 device independent pixels. Going back to index, we can uncomment the next section here and save that, and then press R in the terminal, and we can see that this is the section I call the hero section. It's the main part of screen 1, that's why I call it a hero section, but essentially it has a top, this top balance here, and it's laid out in this manner, it's laid out in almost the same way as the text, as a list style. But for this first example, I wanted us to really get into the whole how to compose layouts using Flutter widgets instead of using the more high level or the more easier to use like list style widgets. So for hero section, we come back to screen 1, hero section.dat. So for the hero section, it doesn't take any props, so I did this one, I gave it everything it needed because it was appearing only once on that particular screen. So the hero section is this part of the screen, and we have a child on top we have a column that's wrapped with a container just to provide some padding around the top and the bottom of it, so that it gives white space, breathing room in your application. So the column is the main thing being rendered the main widget being rendered. It takes an array of children. The first child is text, which says total balance and is colored gray. And the next child is a row. Those are the only 2 children. So the row, in this case, also takes in an array of children. And the children are flex and an icon widget. The icon widget is wrapped in a container. Again, just to provide that nice, faded kind of transparent effect. So the child is wrapped in a container in order to access the box decoration. We give it a padding so that the container we provide does not give some breathing room to the icon. And actually, I think we can just quickly increase that padding to 10. Then press R in the terminal. Yeah, that's better. So you can see now the padding and the decoration. So we have flex and container over in the row, which means that the items in the flex and the icon would be placed horizontally with alignment space between. And then flex over here has text in another row of children, which is another array of children, which is just the 2 text and a size boxed container to give it some space between the 2 text children so that they are not completely next to each other. So size box is just a widget that takes up space and does really nothing else, and you define how much space it takes by defining a width, a height, or both at the same time. If we come back to the application, to the index.dat file here, and we are going to uncomment this part of it, save it, press R in the terminal and see how our application has changed. So this is the expense details section, and this is a reusable component because, as you can see, I've reused it again over here. These two are extremely similar to each other, and they just need different inputs or different props or arguments. You just need to pass to them different arguments, but the way they're laid out and the arguments or the widgets that compose them are the same. So therefore, this is a good candidate to make it reusable, and you can reuse it anywhere, and it will, as long as you pass in the correct props or arguments it expects, you'll get the same result. So in this case, we go to expense detail section. Over here we have our constructor that takes in a header text, an income text, currency, icon, and we define this over here by defining a variable, saying the variable is final and cannot be changed, saying what type of variable it is, and then giving the variable a name, and then you reference it up here. So this expense detail section class expects this information to be sent down to it. So if you go back to index and let's say you comment this out, the whole application would break and it will not render anymore because expense detail section expects this parameter and that parameter is missing. So if we go back to expense detail section, so this is how I've constructed this particular widget. So we have a container and we have a column within it. The column's children is a text. If you look at this is a text and the row and the container that we're talking about. So this is the text. This one here is a text. This one here is a row, and this is a container we're talking about. These are the children of this. I have wrapped the text widget in alignment so as to keep it to make it come exactly on top of this text because it kept moving to the side of it. And then there's a row here that has an array of children. Its children are flex and text and a size box in between, which corresponds to this 500,000 text and this other smaller text on the side that describes the type of currency we're dealing with. So here we have a text with the income text. This is the parameter we have passed down here, and we've said that it's expecting just the text, therefore, so it's within the text. And this is the part where you would have manually put in, let's say, something like that inside there, and you would have to change this every time because it's not all the time that the text would be the same, as you can see in the image given that these two texts are not the same. Hence you let the file or the class that's calling this other class to pass in the relevant text that is relevant to that particular scenario. So that text, and then the size box, just again to give it some space so that they're not exactly next to each other, the smaller text and the larger text. And then this text here, text in a currency, which is again being passed down here as Kenya shillings. And then a style and color. This last container child, this has container child of the entire column. This child is a flex, and the reason it's flex is because I wanted the children to be laid out horizontally, and I can do that with flex using the direction parameter. So you say axis at horizontal, and flex will organize all these children horizontally. Over here we've passed an icon, a second icon, and the icon text. The icon, you can pass in an entire icon. You can also just pass in icon data. Going back to index.dat for screen 1 folder, you can see that we've passed in an icon text, an icon, and a second icon, and these ones are being pulled from this file, finals.dat, which is this one here, because the file was getting way too crowded and just way too confusing, so I decided to just pull out the local variables and put them in a different file and then import them from there. Like icon roller in one chart, because these things are almost the same except for color. So we have icon, and then the icon, the first one is green, the second one is red, mostly that, and then the texts that are next to the icons are different. This part is what you're talking about with the green, red. So it's an icon, another icon, and a text, and each of them is being laid out in a row. So that's what's going on over here for this, and we are able to call this thing again. We're just doing that and passing in a different set of parameters, props. So we are calling the same widget here, or the same class here, but we're passing in different information to it. So now if we save our file and press R, we should see the second row show up with the same styling and the same icons, just different colors and the text being different. But essentially you can do this like 10 times, as long as you just pass in the information it requires. You don't need to go back into expense details section and start changing stuff, and you also do not need to like have this whole crazy thing inside here. Instead we've made it really clean by just making it like this, and then you pass the props and you sort of abstracted it away, so you don't have to see all this unless you want to go into the class and see exactly what's going on. So going back to that, we only have two sections left. View report section, which is a very simple one. So if we save that and press R, we have this. This is what we expect to see on the screen. So if we do that, and you can see this is the button could come up with. And if you go to view report section.dat, this is just a container so as to provide the padding around the text and the icon. And this is another container that is wrapping row so as to get again we are only wrapping the row in the container to have access to the decoration box decoration, to create this nice border radius around it and to give it that nice effect. So the row is very simple, as you can see. It only has a container, a size box, and a text as its children, and it puts these children in a horizontal, arranges them horizontally. This container is wrapping the icon button. So the icon button is one type of button that Flutter provides. It requires an on press, so I gave it an empty one because we don't want it to do anything right now. We just focus on the UI, giving it a color, and I've given it an icon. We've added padding around the icon, and we've created this, also wrapped it with a box decoration, and here we're accessing the theme color using theme.ofcontext.accent color and giving it a border radius. So the row just has the icon button, size box, and the text. The container around the icon button is just for styling the icon button. The container is just like a div element in CSS. It doesn't really hold space, so just so that we can better understand this layout. And that's all for that part. And then this part, if we and comment, save, press R in the terminal, we should see that we have completed our UI with this little part. This part I found a bit more complicated to implement. So this is the bottom card section, and it has a grid view.count. We've wrapped it and expanded so that it doesn't create that needs layout error. That usually means that you are placing a scrollable widget within like a column or a row. So for the bottom section of the app, this is a grid view count that's being wrapped by an expanded widget, because if you put a scrollable widget within a column or a row, you get an error about layout and render boxes. So the grid view given a child aspect of and cross axis of 2 main axis spacing to create some spacing between them. This is to say that we only have 2 per row, 2 grid boxes per row. This was to determine how large or the aspect of the child in the row. So I didn't want it to be super long or very thin. And the children for the grid view is now this individual card, which I have again made reusable, and it expects from this, you can see that it expects a text called corner text, an amount, and a description text, and it also expects an icon. So if you go to the individual card, you can see that we're giving it a padding all around. We are using text. We are using decoration. We are using the container to wrap the main child of this class, which is the column. And we're using this decoration again to provide this sort of effect over here. Now we're looking at an individual card. As you can see, these 4 cards are the same. Essentially, they each have an icon, a text, and a text. Therefore, it's a good candidate again to be made reusable, which is what I've done here. Yeah, so it only has a row, a size box, and a flex, which is the size box. Again, is to just create some space between the two things, this and this text, because as you can see, there is some space here in between them. The first child of the column, which is the row, it spaces its children along its main axis using space between. This children is the icon and the text. The text only, this is the one that's being passed from. It's being passed from here, this text, and the icon is this entire icon is being passed. So when the entire icon is being passed, you just say icon like that. If you're just passing a specific part of an icon, then you say icon data. So this one takes an icon which is being passed entirely, so we can just write icon. The other one takes a text, it takes a string, not a text widget, so we have to define the text widget over here and then say the string. And the reason for this is because the different texts are styled almost the same way, so there is no need to us the class calling it to define again the styles, because the styles are almost the same. So the first one row has children icon text and then the size box, and then the flex we are setting its children to a vertical direction. For its next child is the size box, which just creates space, and then the flex we're setting this children to a vertical direction, and the children is a text widget, another size box again to create some space between them, and another text. So it's 2 text widgets with a size box in between. We are wrapping the text widgets in an align widget so that it can giving it center left, so that we can make it align right along the icon instead of being in the center of the container or the flex. So that's about it for the code and my approach to creating that. That's mostly it for my approach and how I approach this project and how I approach designing it. And since the video is getting a bit too long, we will do the second screen in the next video. It will release in a few days. And if you like this style of walking through the code and discussing my thought process, comment below, please. And if you rather that in the next video I actually go step by step with the coding and just showing exactly step by step and typing it out, coding along essentially, please also let me know. I appreciate your feedback. I look forward to reading your comments. And if you like the video, please like it. It helps this content reach other people who are also trying to learn Flutter or who are experiencing problems with Flutter layouts. See you in the next one.